All right, real happy to be joined on the Sports Card Shop guest line by the Vice President of CGC, Mr. Andy Broome. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for. I know you're a busy guy. Thanks for making some time, and you got some great announcements with your company. We'll kind of save those for the big finale, so to speak. And like I said, the off the air, when the tagline of the show is hobbies of people. I have people on the show, not companies. They may represent companies, but by all means, they're individual in their own right. I guess my first question is it easier to write a book or grade a card?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I'd still say probably grading a card. That's easier.
Yeah, and I know you wrote a book collecting for collectors, if I'm not mistaken. Is that
I
right?
have a cartoon book, Collecting the Collector,
Yeah,
and then also have a novella that's based on the story of Jackie Mitchell. She was the 18-year-old woman who struck out Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So it is easier to grade a card than to do those things.
Most of the time.
And that's very cool. I think everyone always has, like, everyone thinks they have a little author in them or writer in them, but it's not as easy as people think. So kudos there. But
Oh,
yeah,
I just want to say, look, I think everybody has at least one book in them. Everybody has a story to tell, and look, I'm no author, but I'm determined. I'm determined in what I do, and so my books are a great example. That was many hours at night, working on them. So to that, I would say anybody, everybody has a story. So if you feel like you have a story to tell, just put the effort in and do it, hammer it out.
yeah, great advice and a little inspiration to get in the game rather than watch it, right? And
That's right.
I'll start off with this. You were at Beckett for quite a bit before making the move over. How tough of a decision is that when you're with one company for a while and kind of worked their way up and then to go to another company? Can you talk about the maybe the different or maybe the not difficulty in a decision like that?
Yeah, anytime and you're in that type of position, there's risk. It is a big move. I was a senior vintage grader there for 16 years. Um, but I'm a passionate collector. I've been collecting since full time collecting since 1987. I'm one of those rare ones. My mom didn't ever have the chance to throw out my baseball cards. I never stopped collecting. So I always look at everything from the perspective of a collector because that's what I am, and would I be happy with the product I'm putting out and things of that nature. And so, uh, the move for me was I wanted to do more. I wanted to be able to take card grading to the next level. I wanted to be able to offer more and do more, and that's what this opportunity was. Is it was the chance to really start something from the ground up, the way that my vision, the way that I wanted to do things, and so it was a risk, but in my mind there was never a time where I wavered. It was the right decision, to go out and really do what I thought needed to be done, and in a way where I have more more backing, more ability to do more.
I appreciate you sharing some of that, insight with that. Like you said, you are a collector, right? And I think, when you see companies, right? I think, I get asked that all the time, Andy. Like, would you rather see a company? It doesn't matter what company. It doesn't have to be, run by someone who's in the hobby or knows the hobby and has their finger on that pulse, so to speak. And I'd say, listen, if you ask me, right? Everyone has an opinion. That's all they are. But my opinion is such, and I think that only helps, right? I think the risk is when you don't. I'm not saying it can't be done. I just think the degree of difficulty is higher when you don't know kind of the landscape you're in. It's like somebody. It's like a tour guide, right? Who's done the tour. you know, how many times over. He knows it, like, and then someone says, "Hey, we'll show you at one time," and then you're on your own, right? Which one
Yeah.
would you rather take you on that tour? Maybe not the greatest analogy. I just happened to use it, but I think, you know, having someone familiar with the terrain, especially nowadays in the hobby, changes so quickly. From, you know, used to be you're in the hobby a long time. I'm in. It used to be, you know, the news cycle we get in a week used to be a year's worth back when, right? So it
Yep.
is so quick. I think you have to sort of be involved. I mean, that's just my take on it. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, 100%. You know, and not just in cards and in card grading in particular, but you know, you nailed it. It's any walk of life, right? Is that passion's going to show through to the final product. And yes, we're a business, and yes, we're here to make money. That's what all businesses do. But the difference is we're staffed with very passionate people from the ground up. You know, I was talking to somebody earlier today. You know, the chairman of our company of Certified Collectibles Group, he would be in there for hours each day grading coins in the coin room. Now he's a renowned coin expert, and he certainly doesn't have to go and, you know, we're not relying on him to grade coins, but that's his passion and that's his expertise. And so that really shines all the way down to the lowest level, and from the ground up is that passion. You know, my graders, you know, on the sports side is, you know, if, you know, things happen and you know, if a mistake is made, they take it personal, you know, and that shows to me that passion. They want it right. They want to know, you know, what I always preach to them is, you know, when you open up that box of cards that you submitted and you're seeing them for the first time, you know, that experience, you know what you expect. You expect everything to be correct and look right and be right. And so that's that mantra is, you know, how would you feel getting this back into your own collection? And I like to feel that does reflect in our final product and what we put out there.
Yeah, no doubt. And you know, as someone that does that, and it's, you know, even though a lot of times I already know my grades ahead of time, right? It's still fun to see them in person. And many people don't like to know, and keep that element of surprise. You know, when you mentioned grading, there's a lot about the grading space that people don't know about, and sometimes people will turn on a microphone and talk like they do. You know, well, I want, you know, I know some of the answers for every company. It's different too. It's not one size fits all. For someone that's looking to become a grader for CGC, well, obviously that's the space, you know, and you're involved in. What's that process look like for a potential future grader, and how would they approach, you know, making that, if that's their dream, making that dream a reality?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that's something, you know, we're as we continue to grow, we're still looking for graders, especially graders with experience already. But you know, the number one requirement, aside from having, you know, you need to have a good base knowledge of cards, right? You need to be able to identify the cards, and at least have some personal experience grading. Maybe you've been submitting cards on your own, or buying and selling. All those things really add to your card grading education. uh, and you know, have that passion. You know, this isn't just a job. You know, we look at it, this is a career, and this is something where if you're passionate about cards, you wake up in the morning with a smile on your face knowing what you're going to do during the day. And you know, for us, you know, we have a actual classroom. Dr. Webb is our who leads our education department, and so you know, we're really geared to the education of card grading. And that's not just to maintain your grading line, which it does, and continuing education, but you know, for those who are very passionate, who have you know, good card knowledge, you've been in cards, you know, for personal collecting, or even as a dealer, you know, those are the types of individuals that can come in and really embrace the education, and learn how to grade, and we can teach how to grade. But you know, anybody that you know, if cards are your life and you know who you are, you know, you cards are everything. You know, it's something that's great to get into. It's not for everybody, even people who love cards. I mean, you have to think you're spending 8+ hours a day, you know, looking at other people's cards, and as exciting as that sounds and is, it can be very monotonous. You know, it can be tedious because you've got to be focused. You've got to stay on your game. You know, we've got to you've got to maintain the grading line. And so, I've been grading now professionally just over 24 years. And so I've seen a lot of graders come and go, and seen a lot of training. And, that's the one thing is if you're a lover of cards, and you think this is it, this is your passion, then I say go for it. Contact us, and it's something we can look at. But yeah, it's not for everybody. It can be tough, especially when you're on the road grading.
Yeah, no doubt. And you didn't sugarcoat it, right? You said how it kind of really is. But there, if you have a passion for or anything, we're in this case we're talking about card grading, but whatever it is, right? Unless you go for it, you'll never know the answer to the question. We've heard a lot lately in the last year or two, especially with AI and grading. There are companies that are saying they use it. I'm old school, Andy. I'm an old guy. I might be the old man on the porch here. I think there's something to be said about the human element. We even in Major League Baseball, they're talking about replacing the home plate umpire with a robotics and computer system to call balls and strikes at least. I still like the human element to that. I think a scanner, a computer, or whatever instrument that would ever replace a person. I just don't think it can be the same as picking up a card and turning it different ways and looking at all the things you really need to look at. I'm sure people would debate that with me or argue that point. But I'm pretty old school and think I feel like it can be used, but I don't want it to be exclusive where there's not that human element at all anymore. And I want to get kind of your thoughts on that, and where do you see that technology kind of eventually falling into place if it happens?
Yeah, no, it's something that we do use, and I agree 100% with you. I don't believe that the technology is there for full AI grading without the human element for a couple of reasons. But the biggest reason is it takes a high level expertise of card grading to train that model, and some of the AI that we see is just out there and developed. It's not really who's giving that grading information, what expertise. But real AI, the thing with that, like what we use is AI assistance. So from day one, we've used AI system for attribution, which is identification of the cards, which is on the verification side. When they come in, it's verified what the card is versus what the customer says on their form versus our database. But on the grading side, we have grading AI assistance, and what that does is we want to give graders a dashboard of all the information that they need to make more informed decisions, and be more efficient as well. But, it's not replacing the grader. It's assisting the grader. So my expert looking at a card, maybe he or she looks at it and says, I think this is a 7 corner. The AI assistant says, oh, I think this is a 7-5 corner. But then the grader can look and see that and go, no, I'm sticking with, it is a 7. So I put it in a 7. The AI engine says, okay, this expert says it's a 7. I'll go with that. And so that's the real applicable AI, right? That's what's being used now. That's what we use. Will it ever replace a human grader 100%? I'm sure eventually it will, but we're not there yet. There's so many variables involved, and it's much deeper and much more than taking an image of a card and feeding it into a computer. There's a lot more elements to that. One example is, the surface of a card. That's not something that AI can read based on a scan. That's almost like you have to look at a surface of a card like a topographical map. It's almost got to be a 3D rendering. So whole different process. So, AI is, it can be quite complicated, but it's a wonderful tool that we can use now to assist our experts rather than just trying to replace them with the model that, outside from here, if you have another AI model, who knows who's training it? Whose expertise is this based on? What's the experience of the graders in the model? And those are things that have to be considered. So, AI is one of those buzzwords. It's everyone wants to hear it because it sounds cool, and this company's using AI, or, whatever. But like I said, we've been using it for day one in the sports side, and it's a great tool.
Yeah, and I like how it's used, like you said, in combination with the human element, right? And so I just, again, maybe I'm old school to a fault, but I like the combination of both, and I know it's being used a lot like that. That's to me, that's I like that. It makes the grader's job a little easier and convenient too, right? And anything that maybe takes a little pressure off him, right? You really can't argue with that. When I hear people really kind of proponents of like 100% AI, the thing they always like point to is like, well, grading's subjective, which it is obviously. What if the grader had a fight with his wife, or husband in the morning, and came to work and kind of in a grumpy or bad mood, and then they always say don't bring your home to work or your work life home, right? But I guess it could happen. But I always say, well, that's more on the person. Like you got to separate the two. When you hear, I'm sure you've heard that scenario. Kind of, what's your take on those kind of when you hear that? What's your thoughts?
Well, look, anything that a human's involved in, it's always going to be subjective to a point. And part of being an expert in a field is not only your experience but training as well, and ongoing training. So to maintain that expertise, maintain that line, if you will, grading's no different. And yes, there's a human element there, but that's why there's checks and balances, right? That's why it's not just a grader sitting in a room, grading cards. It's an entire operation, and so there's checks and balances throughout the entire system, because we have to have some safeguards in place for that. Because as you said, somebody may have a bad day, but that can't be reflected in our product. And so we along with our continual education, we make sure that our graders have what they need and are comfortable and all of that. But at the end of the day, things happen in life, and so we have to, as an organization, have some checks and balances to ensure that the customer is getting a consistent product.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you said, I'm glad to hear you say that there's a team involved, and so it's like you said, it's not always just one person that might have a bad day that just takes it out on a card or a person's card. We like that's kind of the scenario always in our mind, but it doesn't always mean it's exactly how it goes. And so good to hear you say that. Getting back to a little your purse collecting, I know you're a vintage guy. I'm a vintage guy as well. I know you do a lot of Japanese vintage baseball, non-sports. Kind of speak to that, like how you got into that aspect of the hobby, and what you like to collect.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little weird because by the time I was 13, I was all in on T206. That was my thing. So I was, the 13-year-old kid going around to card shows in the late 80s and only buying vintage pre-war, especially.
Well, I'm not. I don't mean to cut you off, Andy. I don't know if you're weird. I think you were just the head of the. I think you were the smart guy in that room, apparently. So, but
Well,
go ahead.
But yeah, it fascinated me. It fascinated me that here's these cards at the time were almost 100 years old, and who were these players, right? And as you dive into it, they each have their own story, and the cards themselves have their own stories. And I'm dating myself here, but I'm old enough to have talked to people who actually remember when these cards came out, and one of the stories from my hometown was always that these were. Kids would find the T206 cards, the cigarette cards on the streets downtown, from the tobacco shops. The men would throw them out and stuff. And so that was just fascinating to me as a young, teenager. And so I just fell in love with it. And so, over the years, pre-war baseball is my primary thing, but I began to branch out. I really enjoy 19th century baseball. That's one of my favorites. You collect everything, and eventually you have to look at other areas to go into. And then, so I got into vintage Japanese baseball, which is still fascinating to me. One player in particular that is my PC is Victor Starfin, who was the Russian pitcher in Japanese baseball pre-war and then occupational period. And that story just fascinates me. And that's a movie in and of itself, but looking at collecting cards from a different culture in a different country, that from a different time, it's fascinating how cards were collected and even purchased, Japan post World War II versus the US. And so it's just fascinating that there's all these different elements. And, as we know, collecting cards, especially vintage, there's so much culture involved as well. It's so much deeper than the cards themselves. And so I just, everything vintage has just always fascinated me.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm a vintage guy, so you don't have to sell me. I'm hook, line, and sinker, and even the non-sports stuff, even in the vintage side, has seen a little bit of a trajectory as more people kind of discover it, find out, and it's something I've done. I'm a big Billy Joel guy, so I made an effort to get the first time Billy Joel appeared on a card. It's in this case happens to be a Panini sticker, but the first time on what would be considered a collectible. And we're seeing a lot of people kind of go back and find their favorite actress, actor, comedian, and their first appearance on a collectible type thing. Have you even noticed that, like in the grading space, you're seeing a lot more of that kind of stuff than ever before being submitted for it to be encapsulated and graded?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, vintage, but I love non-sport vintage as well. And there's so many cool cards that, it's almost like, I give you a great example, the cigarette card, British cigarette card with Walt Disney and with Mickey Mouse on his knee. I would see that card. I would always buy it. It was always, as a $10, $15 card, and love that stuff. And now, of course, that's a big card. And so we've seen a lot of that, of stuff that people are now really starting to catch on to, but there's so much great stuff in non-sport. One of my collections in non-sport, vintage non-sport, is George Washington cards. And obviously he wasn't around, they weren't during his career, but there's 19th century and early 20th century. It's some cool cards that just feature George Washington. And I actually collect a lot of non-sport that way, theme collecting. And it's even more fascinating than vintage sports because of these stories. I'll throw one out there. Where else can you collect a Claude Monet rookie card, right? But he has a 1901 French chocolate card. Actually, it has two variations, but I mean that was during his lifetime. And that's really cool. One of the most famous impressionist painters has a card. There's so much of that.
Yeah, and some of this stuff, people don't even know a lot about it. Like, we're still discovering stuff. I have two boxing cards. I don't have them right near me, or I'd put them on the screen. But I believe they're from Czechoslovakia, but I think they came out of chocolate products. It's a Joe Louis and a Rocky Marciano card. Very thin stock, but anyone I've ever showed it to that's been in the hobby space, even a boxing guy that I know, had no idea anything about it. So there's a lot of that stuff still in it. Believe it or not, even with all the technology and knowledge, there's stuff that people still are not very aware of, and especially on the non-sports side, there's people are like, hey, this is the first card of this particular subject, and someone else will say, no, a couple years earlier this was made, and they're probably disappointed because they thought they had the first one. But there's still a lot of that here, all these years later, still going on. I think that's kind of what makes it even as fun as it is that we're still learning. I mean, you'd think the cat would be out of the bag, but we're still discovering and finding out about where these products came from, how short printed they are, and a lot of the times, like you said, you were talking about the story with those tobacco cards, just kind of, the person bought the pack of cigarettes for the cigarettes. They're like, hey, I don't want this, and it's on the street, right? That was sort of the reality then. So a lot of this stuff didn't really, didn't get saved, and so there's a lot less of it potentially, and less knowledge about it. What do you think about kind of that take?
Oh, 100%. That's one of my loves, is the research and new discoveries, and even research on known cards. One of my favorite sets. I love candy cards, the E cards. And what's so cool is you take your average E card versus your average T card, like a T206. And, it's very hard to find E cards in decent condition or even halfway decent condition. Well, if you look at it, it was men, grown men who bought the cigarettes in that time, but it was the kids buying the candy. So, the candy cards are always mangled, and that was a product of their environment. But, I love the research and talking about E cards. One of my favorite sets is the E90-1 American Caramel set. And, for decades, it was 120 cards is the checklist. But, back around, was it 2011 or 12 or whatever? I was instrumental in cataloging the 121st card, which is the Dots Miller with Sunset. They had with and without Sunset. And, this is 100+ years after this set was not only issued, but it's a good 75 years after it was cataloged. And, we had the checklist. And so, that type of stuff, adding something new to the checklist that's 100 years old, that's awesome. I love it. I know that another example, the E104 Naja Caramels, the Fred Tenney card. Up until 2018, that card didn't exist. And it's just a common, but that, we don't know this whole checklist of this set. And now since 2018, there's 3 of this same card known. All came from St. Louis area, which is where the company that produced Naja Caramels is from. But it's still out there. And that's one question I get a lot is, do you think there's still original collections out there? Do you think there's Wagner still out there? Absolutely. There are not as many as there used to be, but, I've been involved with multiple original pre-war collections to come to market and including a Wagner. And so they're there, they're out there to this day. There's still stuff to be found that people have, families have just forgotten about or didn't even know they had, but, all it takes is you clean out a basement or an attic, and now there's a new to the market card that no one knew about.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's fun, and now everyone's running into their crawl space as we speak to see what might be up there, right? And it's always fun, right? When you move into a new house, you buy a new house, and you check those areas out. You've heard people find something, maybe there's a piece of the wall missing or a brick missing. They find something behind it, and it's always fun to hear those kind of stories, right? And
Absolutely.
We got the Nationals coming up. I know you'll obviously be there. How much time do you get where you can kind of walk the floor and maybe do a little shopping and find some of those vintage cards on your target list?
I'm laughing because this conversation came up. I think it was on Twitter the other day, but it kind of started up, and that was what I look forward to retirements, to go to the National and actually get to shop for myself. So, but yeah, this will be my this will be my 25th National, and
Wow.
two of those were before I started grading professionally. So those 2 I got to go, on my own and and have fun. But no, so it's work and it's a lot of hard work. But I try to make a few minutes here and there. And fortunately, I know some great dealers in the industry. Then they know what I like, and so sometimes they end up bringing stuff to me to look at.
Hey, listen, nothing wrong with that, right? You can order a pizza and have it delivered. Why can't you have cards? I don't
That's
find
right.
anything wrong with that. Like you said, you're working hard, right? Little perks of putting in the hard work, and it's nice that people look out for you, right? I think everyone has a story along those lines, and we got that coming. When this airs, will be literally about 20 days away from the National. You recently announced as a company some breaking some new policies and new exciting things. I'll have you sort of do the honor, and share what some of those that announcement that you've already made, and many people may know, but for those that may not have heard, go ahead and share that.
Yeah, absolutely. So on June 20th, we announced we have merged CGC trading cards and CSG sports cards into one entity. So we're CGC cards. That allows us to be able to grade trading cards, non-sports and sports all together. What that means for customers is that it's a streamlined process to submit. You put everything in one box, do one online submission form, and everything gets graded. And that's the high level of it. That's the you know, bringing the two together under one name. But there's a lot more to that as well. You know, one of the other things that we have now is we've removed the requirement for membership, so anybody can submit cards. Now we still have our membership, and we actually are growing that program. You know, you get the money back in grading credits, and you'll actually get a reduced grading fee, as opposed to just the non-membership fee. But you know, the whole point of this is to make this as streamlined as we can for our customers. You know, it's a we get that. You know, we spent over a year now with focus groups, doing surveys, talking with dealers that work with us, and also just everyday collectors as well. And you know, we wanted their feedback. What are the hurdles that you encounter when trying to submit with us? How can we make our service better? And you know, the numbers show it. I mean, we're already the number 2 largest card grading service in the world. You know, Certified Collectibles Group is the largest collectibles grading company in the world. We've graded combined 75 million collectibles since 1987. So, but I say all that because, you know, we have a rich history, and we're very passionate about collecting. And so we want to continue to serve collectors and make sure that we're doing the things that they want, and making it easy for them. So that's the reason for this merger, is to streamline everything. And you know, more announcements will be coming out soon. We actually will go live July 12th, when we'll start shipping cards with the new label. And then of course we'll be at the National as always. We'll be grading on site. We're going to have some crazy things there. Of course, number one, I'm going to have lots of sample cards to hand out, so people that haven't seen our holder before and know how clear our holder is, they have a chance to take one home.
Yeah, I don't like cutting you off, but I want to ask you, like, what's the secret to that? It is crystal clear. I'm not gonna lie. Like, that thing is like, I mean, why don't you know? It's the clearest holder, I'll say it, in the industry. How is that you're the only one? I mean, I'll say it. Like, why are we not seeing more of that? I don't want you to give away trade secrets or anything, you know, or Colonel Sanders' recipe here, but like, how is that the case? I mean, as much as you could say.
No, absolutely. I'd love to talk about it. No, you know, this goes back to the very first conversation you and I had here. Is, you know, why did I make the move to go to CSG and Certified Collectibles Group? That's another aspect of it. You know, to be able to come in and say, I want this as a holder. I want, obviously, security is number one. So these are the parameters. I want the most secure holder, but I also want it crystal clear. And, you know, I have to give credit where credit's due. I can't take all the credit for this, but, you know, again, Certified Collectibles Group has been going since 1987. NGC coin grading, you know, they've gone through different series of holders and different types of holders. And so I was very fortunate to be able to lean on that expertise of you know, designing these holders. And so that I had a lot of resources at my disposal. And so, but yeah, that was our goal. That wasn't by accident that the holder is that way. It was by design. How can we make the best holder? Because that's what it's about. That's part of the customer experience, to feel that feel, the weight of it, the clarity of it. And it's no different than the label. When you buy a card, you're buying the card. You don't want the label to take away from the card. You don't want the holder to take away from the card. You just want the best image of the card. You want a label that's neutral, gives the catalog information, gives the grade, but that's it. And so that's another driving factor of this merger, is a very neutral label that doesn't take away from the card. And then, of course, you know, while some things have changed, we're definitely not changing our holder. And as we introduce more sizes of holders, they'll be the holder that everyone knows. It'll be the same type of plastic.
Yeah, no doubt. And I like that you said, you know, the focus is definitely the card, right? That's the focal point. But the aesthetics around the card, you can't throw that out too. That's important. And the holder, like you said, itself. And you know, I think there's a lot that goes into that. And you know, how much thought? I know the answer to this, but for those that don't know, when you do change a flip or the holder or the format, you know, it's got to be a difficult decision, because you know that people that are already kind of invested in the company and have a lot of their collection or their cards in what now becomes the old holder. It wasn't the old holder, but it is now. You know, how much of a factor is that in when you do a redesign or a new design?
Oh, it's one of the top for sure. I mean, that's that's protecting that legacy is paramount for us. And the analogy I gave earlier today when we were talking here in the office was that I want to think of our grading service like the U.S. Mint, and what I mean by that is the government, our U.S. government, has never devalued any currency and coins that they put out. So 1804 silver dollar, it's still worth $1. Of course, you'd be a fool to go cash that in, but it's still worth that dollar. And so that's the same approach that we have here. Every card we've ever graded is still image of front and back are on the website and the cert verification. The POP report continues to support those to set registry, and our guarantee supports them, which is the best guarantee in the industry as far as the card grading and the card itself. And so we're protecting that legacy. The cards that are in our labels from before, they still have the same value because we still stand behind them 100%. And I think that's really, really important because you can make changes and think about the future only, and that's okay. But to your point, we have a heritage, we have a legacy. Granted that we haven't been grading cards as long as some companies, as far as for card specific, but there's still a legacy there. There's still millions of cards and holders with our label, and so it is important, and that's why we really focused on making sure that those cards, those previous labels, are still supported 100%, just like if you send a card in today.
And one thing I'll say in all grading companies' defense as well, it's not something we like to talk about, but it's a fact of the hobby, right? You've got some people who lack morals, who are making counterfeit cards, counterfeit slabs, right? And it's up to you guys to lead the charge to stay ahead of those folks as best you can. And so sometimes it may be as simple as that we have better technology. We need to make slabs that are harder to forge and counterfeit, so that no one gets burnt or taken advantage of. So sometimes it's as simple as that, rather than even marketing itself. It's just to protect the consumers out there as well.
Yeah, 100%. And that, security is number one when we're designing whether it's a label or a holder or even processes of cards going through the grading system. That's number one. And, that's with a label that's where we start. These are the security features that we have to have. Take those and let's design a label, around that. The holder the same way. And that's one reason why from day one, the very first card we've ever graded to today, every card is imaged front and back, and those images are on the website under the cert verification for that card. And why is that important? Well, it's nice to have an image of the card, of course, but really it's a security factor as well, because anybody can go and scan the QR code or just type in the cert number to the website, and you're going to see what that card looked like before it left our facility. So that this matches, not only does the information match up with the certification there, but it's the image. And so that's just one of many security features. And if you're going to have a product that you have a guarantee you're going to stand behind, you need to have the best, most secure product.
Yeah, and really important, especially on the vintage side of the hobby, where we've seen, listen, no one likes to talk about it necessarily, but unfortunately it's part of the terrain, right? Where people are rolling cards out, trimming them, and that photograph can kind of illustrate maybe the differences and kind of catch that, or at least document it. So people who do that, consequences can be faced, or even better, someone doesn't get burnt or taken advantage of. And I think, I know you feel that way, and that protecting the hobby and the consumers is right at the forefront of what you do. And there's no shortage of grading companies. They're in the hundreds now. I couldn't name them all if I tried or wanted to. So it's I think it's important to, when you hear those that care about more than just filling the bank accounts up, right? Which, like you said, it's a business and that's part of it. But if that's the only part of it, that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, I appreciate you making some time. I know you're busy with with the new announcement, and you got your plate full. And like you said, you hopefully get a little time to enjoy the national when you're there. I look forward to meeting you in person here. In a few weeks, and I always let the guests give out any of the social media website where people can find CGC, your own. If you want to share your own handles or whatever. Take your time. The floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, cgccards.com, CGC cards on social media platforms. I'm not super active on social media other than Twitter. My handle's Card Grader. I answer questions there as well. Yeah, we'll be at the National. Please, if you're going, stop by. If you don't have a question or anything like that, you just want a free sample card to see what the holder and label are all about, please come by, get one. I will say though, when I say our booth is going to be a carnival, I literally mean that. There's going to be a midway and it's all kinds of crazy stuff. So definitely stop by. John, I look forward to meeting you in person as well. And I really appreciate you having me on. I hope you have me on again.
Yeah, nope. I hope we're not doing a one-hit wonder here. I don't like to do that. So we'll have you back as long as you want to come back. Well, Andy, again, I know your plate's full, and I appreciate you making some time. We'll see you. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.